Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Katie Austing. I'm Marketing Manager here at Superior Support Resources, and I want to welcome you to this morning's TechBytes session, How to Cut Phishing Exposure by 85%. It's right on theme with National Cybersecurity Awareness Month that we've been championing and celebrating, well, maybe not celebrating, but championing throughout October. And I'm just going to walk through a couple of housekeeping items, and we'll get started right out of that. The first one is, if you see this start the broadcast screen at any point in time, just click that play button and you'll get right back into the live session. Next, if you do experience any technical issues, as we see can happen, just click that reconnect button and you should get reset right back into the live session as well. Also, we are here, chat with us. We'd love to hear your questions or your comments, any war stories or anything you'd like us to share with the group. We're happy to pick those up out of the chat and share them. Also, we will have a polling question here probably while Rob is giving us a little background on cybersecurity, and you'll see that in the lower right of your screen. So we hope you enjoy participating, and we'll share the results of the polling questions as well. The session is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you within 3 business days after the session, likely before the end of this week. And let's get over to a little bit about SSR. For those of you who aren't familiar with Superior Support Resources, or SSR, we've been providing small to mid-sized businesses with technology services that increase productivity, improve profitability, and reduce risk for more than 20 years. Our total IT service capabilities that you see on the right allows us to be far more than a managed service provider. We provide a well-rounded, tailored solution that scales up or back with your technology needs, keeping you up and running and securing your environment to develop and also developing specialized reporting and applications. So this session, we're talking about, oh goodness, another little glitch here. We're talking about cybersecurity, and one of our engineers, Rob Ninehouse, really focuses on cybersecurity. So I'm going to let him talk you through that and give you a little more background. Rob?
Thank you, Katie, for introducing SSR, and welcome all this morning from sunny Phoenix. My name is Rob Ninehouse. I've been with SSR for over 6 years. And in that time, we've seen a great need by our small and medium business clients to be shielded from cyber threats. Therefore, SSR started to expand our cybersecurity offerings, and we now stand out as an IT cybersecurity partner with many offerings, including security reviews, programs, NIST 800-171, which soon will be CMMC, and compliances like ITAR, SOX, and PCI. We are supporting our small and medium business, and more than just IT, because we feel that it's important to build infrastructures with security in mind. The cyber threat landscape in the real world is ever expanding, and recent events made it even harder to protect and secure our resources. For instance, COVID-19 has led to a number of unique challenges that most small and medium companies have not seen in the past. Changing work environments like remote work, using alternate workstations, and made it difficult to maintain a high level of security. When companies are laying off employees, the remaining users often have to juggle expanding workloads with kids at home, taking care of the elder, etc. Unfortunately, the dark side will always exploit a crisis, and we definitely see the results of that. There's been an alarming increase in cyber attacks, from ransomware takeovers of hospitals or public sector systems to private network hacking and ransomware demands. Many of these recent phishing attacks are targeting also the trust in big name video conferencing platforms like Zoom to steal personal information. For instance, recent Checkpoint research uncovered that in a 3-week time frame, Zoom-related domains that were newly registered was about 1,700. And they found that about 4% of that was actually suspicious or malicious. What do hackers do with that? Well, they use those domains domains to fabricate Zoom meeting invites and create fake COVID-19 themed email alerts. Individuals who respond to those usually end up downloading some malware or otherwise compromising big data security. One of the invites that they will send is like, you have been laid off and this is your exit interview. For those reasons, we need to invest in education to our end users so we can prevent malicious consequences as part of these attacks. It's commonly believed that over 90% of the data breaches are actually the result of human error, not systems failing. And with so many people working from home, they are now cut off of their regular contact with IT security, and they're generally anxious and stressed. So this is the perfect time for hackers to test the limits of individual vigilance. As I said, education is the optimum method at this point in time to strengthen the human firewall. So often the attack is unintendedly aided by our users. So we need to create a security culture within our companies and train our users to recognize the signs of potential fraud, of phishing attacks, and how to report and handle exploits if they occur. We need to provide educations to our end users on phishing testing and training. SSR for that often reaches out for assistance with external companies like KnowBe4. With us actually today is Joanne Heisman. She's a Senior Vice President of Strategic Insights and Research of KnowBe4. Joanne will guide us through the threat landscape, see how it can create your own company's security culture, and how education can strengthen your human firewall. Joanne.
Great. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Oh,
Yep.
perfect. Excellent. I just wanted to make sure before I jump in. So first and foremost, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. So again, my name is Joanna Heisman. I am with KnowBe4. I have a very unique background in this space. So I was a practitioner for a period of time. I actually helped lead the overall security awareness and training, as well as crisis communication at ADP, so the world's largest human capital management company. And I had people in 132 countries that spoke 20 different languages. So it was a fairly large undertaking. From there, I went to Gartner, and I was the lead research analyst in the security awareness and training space. I had a very intimate insight into all of the vendors in this space, and wrote all of their key research papers on every aspect of security awareness and training. And then I moved to KnowBe4, who is the leader in this space. So it's unique because I have kind of that practitioner background, I have the research background, and then I have the provider background. So I can see this industry from lots of different ways. And so let's dive in. So, being 2020, it's an interesting time, no matter where you are, no matter who you are. And when we often say, what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, again, it's 2020, right? And so the field is fairly open there. But when it comes to cyber criminals, the activity has never been higher, right? And so what they're looking to do is obviously maximize on anything that is going on, in the world, to try to get you to engage with some of their activity. And from a hacker perspective, they're finding that, the larger and the more kind of dynamic the topic is, so COVID-19 is one of them, the more likely it is that, one of the audience members will engage with their mischief. And so I've already introduced myself. Let me tell you a little bit about KnowBe4. So KnowBe4, we were founded in 2020. We've got over 35,000 customers worldwide. We are by far the largest and the leader in this space in security awareness and training. We've been recognized as a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant year over year for the last few years. And in Forrester's new Security Awareness and Training Wave report, we again get that top spot. You know, our mission is very simple. We want to help you build that human firewall around your audience to ensure that, you know, no mischief gets in your walls. So we're going to talk today about the threat landscape. I'm going to show you some really cool phishing benchmark data. We're going to talk about security culture and the human firewall, and then kind of enrolling the help and support that you need. And so first of all, the threat landscape, right? And so, you know, if you discovered burglaries were occurring in your neighborhood, you know, what would you do to protect your home, right? So some might say, you know, get an alarm system. Some might say, start a neighborhood watch. You know, some might say, put cameras outside, right? And so, you know, when it is your personal home, there's a lot of things that you could think to do to better protect that part of your life. So then if you discovered cyber criminals were stealing data from other organizations, what would you do to protect your own organization? And I would take this even a step further. And I would say, you know, if you knew cyber criminals were stealing information from your friends, family, and loved ones, you know, what would you do to better protect your personal environment? So let's talk about the threat landscape. You know, it's all of us all the time, everywhere, in all contexts of life. So all of us. I mean, this is not gender specific, age specific, race specific, geographically specific, none of that. I mean, you know, the hackers are, they're targeting your kids, you know, through their gaming software. They're targeting, you know, the elderly through apps that they might use and or email or phishing. You know, they're you know, targeting businesses. They're targeting, you know, just about anything that they can wreak havoc in or get your information in. And so no one is really safe in this particular cyber world right now. And they're coming after you all the time, right? And so don't think that these criminals sleep, right? So their attack strategies are, you know, like a web, right? So, you know, it's something that they're looking to get to you, and then they're looking to make it really sticky so that you are, you know, kind of trapped in their deception. And it's everywhere, right? So, I mean, you know, it's not just, you know, in the United States, it's all over the world. And frankly, you know, certain countries actually, as long as the hackers aren't hacking companies within their country, you know, it's actually legal, right? And so that they won't, you know, extradite those criminals to, you know, the United States or so forth if, you know, we catch them. And so they're protected, you know, and, you know, some of these very kind of large scale, sophisticated, you know, criminal organizations, you know, they even have customer service groups, right? And so it is everywhere, it's all around and in all contexts of life, right? So there, I mentioned earlier, you know, they're looking at, you know, gaming, they're looking at emails, they're looking at phone, they're looking at text, they're looking at getting to you through your social media accounts. Any way that they can get to you, they will try to get to you. And, you know, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but it feels like that this situation is just kind of getting worse and it's going to keep kind of growing. This is a multi-billion-dollar organization, so this is nothing that's small. So when we look at why phishing is kind of the primary way in, according to Verizon's data breach investigation report, I think that 2021 was just released. So if you haven't had an opportunity, I would definitely take a look at that. I think it's a free download as well. Phishing was a #1 threat action because it's successful and frankly, it works. And so 91% of cyber espionage begins with phishing. And 95% of all security incidents involve some kind of human error. So when I was at Gartner, I would have this very lively debate often with my research colleagues on the technology end. And I would simply have to say, technology can't solve the world's problems, and it would send them spinning for at least a half an hour, right? And so, you know, I'm not saying that technology is important. It is very important. However, you could have the best technology in the world. All it takes is one of your employees to be distracted enough or not know and click on something, and you're off to the races. So when we talk about people and how people influence security more than technology or policy, you need to invest in those tools to increase people's awareness and to increase how you are effectively going to be able to influence their behavior change so that they are at a higher level of readiness so that they can instinctively know what to do should something come across their email or their text or in some other capacity of their daily lives that they would need to make really kind of quick decisions on. So traditional awareness efforts, I'll tell you one thing, it was that belief, fingers crossed, or hope that I'm going to give you information and it's going to lead to actions. Well, it doesn't automatically, I might teach you something, but that awareness, doesn't automatically, result in any kind of secure behavior, right? And so traditional security efforts were, let's do some annual training or some biannual training. It's going to be really like kind of long and boring. And it's like, click here next to computer-based training. And it's going to be written by security practitioners who really know nothing about organizational development or how to engage human beings to learn at a higher level, right? And so now what we've seen is, and I'm certainly biased being at KnowBe4, the content is dynamic and, very cool and, comes in lots of different versions and varieties to meet the learning needs of lots of different styles. And so, we're looking at how can we raise awareness through information and change behavior by giving employees, by giving that audience something really dynamic to connect to so that it's not a drag for them to kind of have this repetitiveness that's necessary in this arena in content, but they're kind of excited and more, willing to engage. So if you're not preparing for an attack, you're headed down a very ugly road fast. And so, I spoke to more clients than I would have liked at Gartner that said that, we've experienced an attack. Now we need to do something about it. And that's certainly not where you want to be in a reactive mode, right? So you want to be at a level of readiness where your employees know what to do, prior to you becoming a victim. So let's talk about phishing benchmark data. And this is very, interesting data that I want to share with you. And so if you've ever watched the show, The Robot, one of the characters was quoted as saying, I've never found it hard to hack most people. If you listen to them, watch them, their vulnerabilities are like a neon sign screwed into their heads. And so people are, very much, they fall into these patterns. They fall into these kind of personal behaviors. And it's very easy for these hackers to be able to assess what these patterns are and then, pull together what their attack strategy is going to be. So when we look at phishing, we have over 35,000 customers. So we have a lot of data to be able to pull from. And on an annual basis, we publish a report, which I'm going to make available to all of you, called the Phishing Benchmark by Industry Report. So we look at about 17,000 different organizations, 4 million users, and about 9.5 million phishing security tests across 19 industries in 3 sizes of business: small, medium, and large. And the results are, fairly, kind of shaking. So let's dive in. So let's say you do nothing. Let's say you're one of these companies who doesn't, we have the technology that we believe that we need, but we're not doing any security awareness training, or it's annual. We're not doing any kinds of communications, right? So if we look across the industries, what we're finding is that if you do nothing, your initial baseline, the kind of the aggregate of all the industries, you have almost a 38% phish-prone percentage. So that's the probability of someone within your organization clicking. So doing nothing, you're 38% more susceptible to an attack because your last line of defense, is not capable, or as capable as they can be. And so there you see kind of the industry information. And again, I'm going to send this out to you all so you'll have a copy of this. So then let's say you start doing something, right? So we're starting to train on a monthly basis. We're starting to communicate. We're doing anti-phishing simulations. And we check back in at the 90-day mark. What we're seeing is, it's cut by less than half, right? So your propensity to click, someone within your organization, drops now to an aggregate of like 14.1%. And you'll see in all of the industries listed there, it is pretty much kind of cut in half. And this is real data that we're pulling from our systems of real customers and real situations. So then now let's say that you're committed to your program for a year. So 12 months of security awareness training, anti-phishing simulations, coupled with the right kinds of communications, and leveraging, months like Security Awareness Month in October, you're down to low single digits. And that is by applying the right kind of security awareness training and, facilitating the right kinds of activities. So when we're looking at the improvement, the overall improvement, we're at about 90%. And that's pretty significant. And most of our clients that look at these numbers say, you know what, I'm not doing anything now. Most of the clients that I talked to at Gartner weren't doing nearly as much as they needed to. And it didn't matter the size of the company. I would talk to some, Fortune 500 companies that, my eyes would roll in the back of my head when they told me that, they were doing the minimal that they needed to do and that their exposure was significant. And so, all different companies, are kind of, are ripe to the attack, but just by implementing, specific things around awareness, you could be much more secure. So what techniques do hackers use the most, right? And so around 90% of the emails that are reported to us, use social engineering. And, you can look through these little gray clouds. I'm sure it's nothing that is, kind of new to you, right? So fake packages, parcel deliveries, your email is going to be deactivated, click here, and upgraded now. And so where there are key places where the sophistication of the attacks are growing, for the most part, it's the simplest strategies that are getting through your systems. So what are the bad guys up to this year? So coronavirus related attacks up by 6,000% just in March, right? And so what we've seen is that, again, this affects everyone. And there's been so many different ways that they can manipulate, their attacks, their emails to get in from, click here to learn more about, COVID in your state, or, click here to understand more about, vaccines, or donate here to help, or, the list is endless, and it's working. And, this is one of those things that attaches itself to, kind of your emotional being, right? And so, COVID-19, lots of people have become sick. Lots of people, are no longer with us. I need to protect myself and my family and my, elderly parents. And, so, this is one of those high concern topics, and the bad guys, it's like a feeding frenzy. Google Calendar invites, really easy to get in through, and I know better, but I am, one to just kind of look at an invite and say, yeah, and click yes, without looking at, where it's coming from and so forth. And that is such an easy way in. Fake attachments, a trusted sender. How many times do you get a LinkedIn request and, you click the view or a LinkedIn message and click view message? Well, that's exactly what they want you to do. Instead of going into LinkedIn and seeing who wants to connect with you, or seeing, who your messages are from, we very easily try to get from one application to another. And then, online sharing services and so forth. So then if I just pivot again a little bit to Corona, and I just briefly mentioned this, it is a target-rich environment. They've been rising exponentially, and it is, an easy way in. And you'll see on our graph kind of where we've kind of charted the rise of it. So what kind of phishing template should you use, right? So, Zoom, GoToMeeting, I mean, those are very popular right now, coupled with the calendar invites. Lots of people in their personal lives are using Instacart and other delivery services for fear of going, into large crowded places. People are also taking advantage of, teledocs and telemedicine, and from a shipping service. There was a period of time where in my home, we did everything by Amazon and Walmart and so forth. And so just to not be out, in an environment. So, KnowBe4 does provide, we have thousands and thousands of templates on these different areas. But if you're creating templates on your own, these are areas that, you should, very much pay attention to, because, if you're looking to strengthen that muscle and train your people to be able to spot, kind of the real chaos coming in, these are kind of the what we're finding as the largest areas that they're getting in. So then let's talk about security culture and human firewall. And I just want to do a time check. Okay, I'm okay. So the question is, how strong, intentional, and sustainable is your security culture? And what do you need to do about it? So anytime we mention culture, most individuals, most employees say, oh, that's human resources problem, or that's an issue with human resources, or they manage it. And, I would say that for some degree, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that they help manage it, but we'll talk in a moment about the differences between organizational culture and security culture. And, culture within an organization is really led from the very top. It's not led from, a department, right? And so what you're looking for is, people at the top to be able to role model, what's expected. And, as you move from company to company, you're going to find that, there are significant cultural differences that you now need to adapt to and change behaviors to conform to. And it's the expected, right? So there's policies and procedures around it and so forth. But I will tell you, one of the most shocking things that I found when I was at Gartner is that, a lot of these kind of high-level executives, C-levels, there has been an assumption for a long period of time that because of role or title, they know what they're doing and they had the appropriate training, and that they just kind of understand this security stuff and are at a high level of readiness. But what we found through our research at Gartner was that these individuals at these highest levels were overlooked because of their role or their title, and don't even have adequate knowledge to be able to, field off an attack. And that's pretty scary because, they are probably the most targeted, as well as their administrative staff, that works with them. And so, when we talk about security culture, we're looking at potentially individuals that really don't understand or, comprehend the full value of having an integrated, comprehensive security awareness and training program, because they've kind of been, I wouldn't want to say ignored through it, but it hasn't been a major focal point for them, right? So they've been focused with IT on the technology. And so then, organizational culture here, definitions, and the way they're similar is, we're looking at the sum of subconscious human behaviors, and we're looking for that to be repetitive. And in order to do that, you need to kind of hit your employees with continuous messaging. And, that's the point we're trying to make through this, because if you look at all of these individuals, on the kind of right side of this particular slide, all different individuals, probably coming from, different, backgrounds and so forth. But when they come into one organization, they're looking at a culture that's not theirs individually. It's a culture that's shared among people. It's something that they have to learn. When I moved from Gartner to KnowBe4, the cultures equally as dynamic were different. And so there were things that I, was required to assume at Gartner that, potentially is not, part of the culture at KnowBe4. And so it's learned. And as a result of it, you have to be adaptive. And your culture will, expand and progress and grow and change, as your business grows and changes. And so, you need to be adaptive and integrative. And there are, rules and patterns, assumptions and beliefs that are very prescriptive to cultures, right? And so, you will have, like, for example, you may have a rule that on a quarterly basis, you need to change your passwords, right? That might not have been the rule at another company. When I was at Gartner, it was monthly. When I was at ADP, it was quarterly, right? But it was a rule and it was something that I needed to follow. But I think that there are, certain ways that you can manage the behavioral aspect of your culture for it to be kind of very positive and very engaging. And so, in conditioning people, right, we're talking about the right kinds of reflexes, right? And so Mike Tyson, for all of you who know this, just really strong athlete and boxer, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And this is what I was referring to a little bit earlier, right? And so, you can't be in a reactive position, right? And so you can't say, I think that we have a plan, or we kind of have a plan, or we're talking about a plan. No, you need to have something in place where people are conditioned, where people understand what to do instinctively should something arise that they need to kind of manage through. And it's funny because when I was at Gartner and I talked to clients about kind of crisis situations, right? And so there needs to be this kind of backup plan. So what do we do if the plan doesn't work, right? And everybody's always like, well, what's your B plan, right? And so you need to have a layered approach to this. But at the end of the day, what I'm encouraging you to do is have that approach. Have something in place so that you're not in reactive mode, because when you're in reactive mode, that's where, the largest portion of chaos is going to come from, because you're not ready or prepared to deal with, what the attackers are looking for. And so when we talk about the realities of security awareness, I will say the kind of the first reality is, just because I'm aware, it doesn't mean I care, right? And so it's that moving your employees from a position of, I know what to do should I need to do it, but I don't really care. And lots of clients are sharing with us that, by personalizing their security awareness approach, and by ensuring that their employees understand, how to leverage what they're learning in the workplace and be able to transition that into their personal lives so that they can better protect their friends, families, and loved ones, right? Because the better the security hygiene is at home, the better it is at work, and vice versa, right? So this isn't something that gets shut off when they turn their computer down, right? So this is across all of their life. And then if you try to work against the human nature, you're gonna fail, right? So it's one of these things that, you need to work with the humans, because they are your last line of defense. Because it's always more important what your employees do. It's way more important than what they know, right? And what we're trying to say there is that, having the knowledge is one thing, but being able to transition that knowledge into some kind of action that is useful to help you safeguard, that is kind of that instinctive do that I've been talking about. And so what's the best formula, right? So we often get asked, what is the best formula, right? So it's, baseline testing, assess where you are now, and then a continuous feed of training and anti-phishing campaigns and communications. So the one the one thing that I oftentimes get asked is, how many times should we phish our employees? Well, I will tell you that quarterly is not enough, right? The recipe that we recommend is monthly. And these are not gotcha exercises. This is not fear for fun. You should be enrolling your employees in what's happening and telling them, we are going to start phishing you regularly on a monthly basis. If you are a high risk individual, we're going to start doing that twice a month, right? To make sure that you are ready. And that you can spot these, situations, and that you can go back and spot them in your personal life as well. And then from a training perspective, again, increase the frequency by which you train and decrease the time that your people spend in training. And so we're looking at, is there a monthly video? Is there something interactive? Is there a game? What can you put in front of them monthly? And then how can you connect all of the communications across your business to make sure that security is not just seen on its own? So what can you do now? Start educating the right way, using lots of different versions of content to meet the different learning needs of your employees. Also start phishing, much more frequently so that, you move from a position of a victim to victimizing the actual hacker. So then, a couple practical ways to grow your security culture. It's critical from everyone from the desk to the boardroom. This is everyone's responsibility. Make it easy, leverage, all the security awareness and training, work, with human nature, work with IT, and then, build healthy examples of culture that you can share across your organization so people understand what they should be modeling. So what's next, right? So, I think I've been kind of highlighting these different areas, across the presentation. So I'll just let you take a read at that. And we're going to send out the presentation after this. But also customers talk to me about motivation, right? And so how can we better motivate our employees? And this has been a hot topic. It was a hot topic when I was back at Gartner. And, clients are really starting to leverage rewards and consequences. But I will tell you that it is something that is a little controversial. And so let me dive into it a little bit. And so from a rewards perspective, clients are sharing with us that, those individuals that are showing really good security behaviors, they're rewarding them with everything from certificates to distinguishing them as, security masters or advocates or champions, giving them awards of time off and so forth. So there's lots of different ways that you could, encourage and reward good behavior. On the consequence side, and this is, I think, the part that is a little bit more controversial, is that, clients are starting to share that they are applying consequences in the form of, scaling individual employee access back to only systems that are required for their job function, marking their performance reviews. And then, some companies are really, talking about, this individual is a high risk, they haven't learned what they should, they're not able to diagnose, they don't have that instinctual behavior that we're looking for. And, they are a big risk to our organization. So they're starting to assess, how big is the value or how great is the value of this particular employee versus the benefit that they bring. And so I've seen a lot of mixes of this across clients, but I will tell you that it is, something that, is relatively new in the security awareness space. And I actually wrote a very comprehensive report on this while I was at Gartner. So I would, ask you to go take a look at that. So how do you get and enroll support, right? There's tons and tons of different priorities across your organization. And, how do you make security awareness one of those priorities that gets funding, right? So securing investment dollars, I often felt like this at ADP, here we go again, right? It all depends on kind of that persuasive communication, your negotiation skills, and packaging your support to ensure that the executives understand, right? So the security, portion of the budget needs to be attached to one of the corporate levers. So one of the key corporate goals. And that might take a little bit of heavy lifting to do that. But again, the executives that are kind of dealing out the dollars, if they understand that it's impacting something that is significant from a corporate perspective, there's this kind of, better ability to communicate the value and also kind of negotiate the dollars that you would need in order to fund your program. So here's just a quick chart with a level of concern with executive issues. And you see, like across the security landscape, execs are really, concerned about monetary loss and business disruption and loss of productivity. And, then we look at the IT side and they're more concerned with, the data breaches and, the loss of reputation and the loss of customers, right? And so there's a balance here that you have to make. But again, both of these organizations, the IT and then, the executives within your business, both of them, see and feel that these are major issues, right? And so that they need to be dealt with. And so how can you connect the dollars between IT and security awareness to make sure that the funding becomes available? And so what do? Right? Express security requirements to these non-IT executives, right? So what's in it for me? Express the scenarios, right? And so if a breach happens, what's our reputational loss? What's our brand damage? What's our revenue loss? What's our loyalty loss from clients? And as I said, like make those clear connection between security requirements and other business objectives. I think the one part as well that I often get feedback on is, that measurable data, right? And so if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring. So make sure that you have those kind of appropriate metrics across your business to be able to measure the success and the movement of the security indicator across your business, that people are changing their behaviors and they have a higher level of readiness and knowledge to be able to have those instincts to do the right thing when they need to. And so final thoughts, right? So, don't ignore the human. They are your last line of defense. And I would say the most critical line that you have. Work your programs continuously, frequently, make sure it's comprehensive, and that it's not, singular, just training. You need the training, you need the anti-phishing simulations. They both lend towards different things. You need the constant communications. And, the diligence behind this, I will tell you, dedicated resources, are ideal in this situation. Right. And so having dedicated resources that can manage the overall security awareness and training programs, that you're utilizing is probably the most effective way. KnowBe4 can give you the right tools, the best training in the industry, the most comprehensive phishing approach with thousands of templates, a really easy to use dashboard, lots of different ways to communicate, free resources, all sorts of stuff, right? But you need to be able to have, people that can manage it on your end and manage it effectively. And it's not just an event-based activity. It's something that is looked at continuously through your organization. So I know that I am a little over in time. My sincere apologies. I've certainly enjoyed my time with you. I'm going to pass it back to our hosts to see if there are any questions at this time.
Absolutely. Actually, I was going to flip over to the poll.
Oh, sure.
It looks like 100% of the attendees are somewhat confident in their employees being the first line of defense against cyber criminals, being, getting emails and texts and being able to decide what is safe and what is not. Could you kind of comment on that reaction? It doesn't surprise me, but I wondered what your thoughts on that would be.
Yeah, I think it's completely off the mark, right? And so, I think that what I've seen based on small, medium, and large businesses, and mind you, at Gartner, I talked to thousands of them, and I focus specifically on this industry. And what I found is that there's generally a blind sense of security that many companies have because they're going through the motions, right? And I'll give you an example. I'm phishing my employees on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. Great. Most companies are chasing a click rate. So I want my click rate to be 2%. Like, I don't care what your click rate is. Let's talk about what kind of templates are you using, right? Are your employees able to diagnose and detect breaches and phishing scams with simple templates? Okay, great. What was your repetition with those simple templates? How long was your test with those? And then, what was your overall click percentage there? And how did it improve? And where did you see some spikes? And then now let's move to more kind of medium difficulty templates. And then let's move to more difficult templates. And then if you have a difficult template, you should have probably, let's say, a 17 to 25% click rate. And that's what you want to see, because that's where now you need to focus in on. So you can pivot your training now to be more focused on those difficult templates, right? And so I think that, going through the motions is one thing, but actually being intimate with the data that you're receiving, that's completely something different. And then I have companies sharing, we have a training program. And I'll tell you what, it's probably a one size fits all. And in some cases, that's good. But the way to get closest to your learners, to have them actually change behaviors, is to zero in on their style, right? And so at KnowBe4, we have on a single topic lots of different ways that you could take this learning to your employees. If you want to, have a course on passwords, you can give it to them in a game, in a video, in something interactive, right? We've got, Netflix light series. We have, there's a ton of content out there. So, are you working with human resources or your training or your internal training organization to understand, because they have the data on this, how people intake content? And then are you differentiating the style of content that you give to those employees, right? That makes a huge difference. Are you communicating on a regular basis, right? So, when I start to kind of dig in and chip away at this, level of confidence that most executives have that have come across my way, I have found that by the end of our discussion, they are less confident.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think you brought up a point of device too. So do you see trends across device in terms of which ones are more susceptible, like when you're using one versus another?
Well, I will say that from a mobile perspective, we've seen that kind of quote unquote, the youth of America, I will call them, ranging anywhere up to the, your, probably early 30s. I'm not in that age group, but these individuals were raised on handheld devices, right? So, what do you see often, right? A kid's crying in a restaurant, parents hand them their iPhone, right? They flip to videos. You don't know what they're looking at. They're on an app, they're on a video, they're on, potentially in, Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram or something, and they know how to use and operate. This generation also, they get their information in very small bite-sized chunks. They get their news through many social media sites. They're not reading, New York Times full articles like, I was brought up on, right? So their news is bite-sized. Most of what they do is reactive through their handheld devices. And so what we're noticing is that there's, a large spike with this kind of, age group and their mobile devices. And I'll tell you, getting to, an attacker getting through social media, it's commonplace these days, right? Or gaming systems, right? And so I think that, the mobile devices, certainly, it's kind of very easy to target through there. But, I think email is what we're seeing. And still, if I'm a hacker and I'm doing a volume play and I'm sending out, to 50,000 employees at one organization, if I get 2 or 3 to click, that's a heyday for me, right? And so, I often grimace when I talk to my teenage boys about, what they're doing on their cell phones and what they're clicking into. And they know better because I talk to them all the time about it. But it's a matter of them just being very reactive and frankly, very distracted. Right. And so what you don't know, I'm sitting here in my home, I'm working from home. My husband, who works in Manhattan, is now, has been working home from March. My one teenager is at college. My other one is upstairs doing remote learning. I've had FedEx come to my door. My phone's rang. I've had like 52 text messages. The guys came to close down my sprinkler. It's distraction. Bad guys are looking for you to be highly distracted on your mobile device or while you're sitting at your desk in your new kind of home arena. You know, they're just waiting for you to make a mistake.
That makes a lot of sense.
And people also think that on mobile devices, they're safer. I mean, what can happen on an iPhone or Android phone? But they forget that they have corporate email on those systems. So if a hacker asks for username passwords of your or just a password of your corporate email systems, they can easily put rules in that forward mail. So people think it's just an iPhone or, what can happen on it? Well, a lot can happen with it.
Yep.
And Rob, I was wondering if, there's particular safeguards that, like basically just the non-negotiable if you're allowing your employees to interact with your corporate environment on a mobile device. What's kind of like need to haves?
Yep. What we're seeing is especially the medium-sized companies are going with corporate-owned devices. They are discouraging just everybody to have corporate mail on their phones. It is a security risk. You are sharing that data on a shared platform. If you are using corporate devices, you can set guidelines like MDM, mobile device management. What happens if this phone gets lost and the bad guys find it? Can you wipe it? Can you wipe? What if this user wins the lottery and the parts from your company? Can you wipe just the email part on it, or are you going to rely on the employee to delete that email? So we're seeing, especially on the mobile devices, a departure from everybody can just do anything on their personal devices to company-owned devices. Same with laptops. In the whole COVID, we're seeing a lot of people working from home, and we're giving them VPN, we're giving them access to our corporate devices, but do those home PCs have antivirus? Are they up to date with security? Do you allow split tunneling? So your 16-year-old son is surfing, but that computer has access to the computer that you're connecting to corporate devices. So we're seeing a departure of allowing personal devices to access business and corporate resources and going to company-owned devices.
That makes sense. Yeah. Joanna, I just have one more question that that I wanted to throw at you today, and then we'll wrap up. But the report and benchmarking is kind of something that was done prior, and I'm wondering if you're continuing to monitor and benchmark and research. Could you share any recent or futuristic looking trends you're seeing?
Yes. And so I will tell you the most dynamic thing that we saw, and this is, we published this like January, February, March. No,
it's recent for sure.
Yeah, no, it's definitely recent. But I will tell you, we are constantly looking at data, and the most surprise, it's not surprising, but when we saw the numbers, we were like, yep, that makes sense. Who is the highest at risk right now? Healthcare, which wasn't even on the map in the top 3 of riskiest, is now the most risky industry in small, the second most in medium, and the second most in large. Right. And so think about it. Right. And so, small hospitals, doctors, healthcare systems. I mean, this is a hacker and a criminal's dream, right? Get in, cause some disruption. They're going to pay a ransom because, that could be life or death, right? And so, you look at it and, and what we found is that, a lot of these health and pharmaceutical companies, their security technology and their security kind of awareness and capabilities of their employees were very, very low. So based on what we're continuing to see, I think that's going to be a consistent trend. And I also, it's funny because people ask me, in the large sector, technology, 55.9%, most susceptible, to being fish prone, right? And so that's alarming. And people are like, wow, well, shouldn't they know better? Yeah. So I think that's one of those assumptions that we make, that people in IT just know better. And, they're oftentimes left out of this kind of security training and awareness stuff and out of phishing. I was talking to a very, very large company when I was at Gartner. And they're like, oh yeah, we don't phish any of our executives, and that function is led by IT. So we don't phish IT. And I'm like, what? And so that 55.5% really makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, thank you. So much great insight. Scary, but really good.
I know. I'm not a feel-good presenter. No, I'm not.
I know. I'll be more aware of how I'm looking at communications and always keeping an eye out. And Rob, thank you for your insights as well today.
Sure.
Joanna mentioned that there's a know before benchmark report. If you look in the Files tab on your console there, you'll see that report and the slide deck. We'll also share those files with you and the recording in the next day or so. Thank you all for joining and participating. We also have in the offers section a feedback survey. Your input helps us build and improve our TechBytes sessions, so please take a minute to fill that out. And again, as part of National Cybersecurity Awareness Month, KnowBe4 and SSR and the national organization are supplying resources for you to use within your organization and help your employees be cyber smart. So if you haven't already, follow those organizations on LinkedIn, subscribe to receive their communications. There's contact information on the screen now. And again, thank you for your time today. We're looking forward to your feedback and seeing you at future TechBytes sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.